Hello and welcome. The process of transitioning from F1 OPT to H1B can be really confusing. Both F1 students and employers can be unclear about the procedures to follow to ensure that individuals in F1 OPT can continue to work even after their OPT has expired. In this short presentation, we'll provide an overview and the 4 easy steps to change status from F1 OPT to H1B. We'll begin by first looking at some key concepts involved in the change of status from F1 OPT to H1B. The F1 visa classification. The F1 is a non-immigrant visa classification for students pursuing full-time education in the United States. Post-completion optional practical training, or OPT. Post-completion OPT is the period during which a foreign student in valid F1 status is allowed to accept employment in a field directly related to his or her major field of study after the completion of the degree program. To be considered for OPT, the student must have completed or have been pursuing a degree and maintain status for a consecutive 9 months, generally 2 semesters. Once approved for OPT by the educational institution's foreign student advisor, the student must apply for and obtain an employment authorization document from USCIS before he or she can commence employment. OPT is usually granted for a maximum of 12 months. If a student's field of study is within STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, the student is eligible for an additional 24-month extension, usually called STEM OPT. The H1B classification. The H1B is a non-immigrant visa classification for specialty workers. It allows foreign nationals to work temporarily in the U.S. and perform services in a professional job. The job must be in a specialty occupation. That is, the job requires somebody with a bachelor's degree in a specific field as a minimum for entry into that occupation. The H1B Cap. The H1B visa has an annual numerical limitation of 65,000 visas per fiscal year. An additional 20,000 H1Bs are set aside for those with a master's degree from a qualifying U.S. institution. An employer cannot file an H1B petition earlier than 6 months in advance of the date of the actual need for the beneficiary services. Because October 1st is the start of the fiscal year, April 1st is the earliest date that an employer can file an H1B petition for the following fiscal year. The H1B Cap Gap. The H1B Cap Gap is the period of stay and/or work authorized by USCIS and ICE for F1 students whose status, OPT, or grace period expires after an H1B change of status is filed but before October 1st, the beginning of the next fiscal year. Let's now take a look at change of status from F1 OPT in 4 easy steps. Step 1. Find an employer willing to file an H1B on your behalf. If you're an F1 student who wants to change status from OPT to H1B, your very first step is finding an employer who's willing to file an H1B petition on your behalf. While this is usually the employer you are employed with on OPT, there's no requirement that the H1B petitioner and the OPT employer be one and the same. Step 2, beat the H1B cap. USCIS has a total of only 65,000 H1Bs available under the cap in the general category and an additional 20,000 available for those who have a US master's degree or higher. Employers who want to sponsor a foreign national on F1 OPT for H1B must first electronically register the H1B beneficiary with USCIS during a designated H1B cap registration period that generally runs in March for about 15 to 20 days. Timely submission of the H1B electronic registration is now required to obtain a cap subject H1B in any fiscal year. Unfortunately, making it into the H1B cap is not guaranteed. USCIS generally receives more registrations than required to reach the regular cap and the master's cap by the end of the initial registration period. Therefore, it must then conduct a random selection process or a lottery to determine who can actually file an H1B petition. Each of the last several years has seen USCIS conduct an H1B cap lottery to determine who gets a chance of obtaining an H-1B visa. Step 3, the employer files the H-1B petition. If the registration filed on behalf of the F1 student is picked in the lottery, the employer will be notified and then must submit the H-1B petition to USCIS starting on April 1st and before the expiration of 90 days. The earliest start date for the H-1B for any fiscal period is October 1st. So what happens to students whose F1 status or work authorization expires before October 1st? Step 4, seek your CAP gap extension. Current regulations allows certain students with a pending or approved H-1B petition to remain in F1 status in the US during the period of time between the expiration of their F1 status and October 1st. Generally, if an F1 student is in valid status when an H-1B Cap petition is filed as a change of status, the student will be covered by CAP gap. If the individual's F1 OPT is still valid when the H-1B Cap petition is filed, then the work authorization will also be extended until September 30th. F1 students who don't qualify for a CAP gap extension and whose periods of authorized stay expire before October 1st will be required to leave the US, apply for an H-1B visa at a consulate post abroad, and then seek readmission to the US in H-1B status for the dates reflected on the approved H-1B petition. In conclusion, H-1B Cap registrations on behalf of F1 students employed on OPT must be timely filed during the initial H-1B Cap registration period, and the H-1B Cap petition must be filed while the student's period of stay is still in effect to avoid any breaks in employment arising due to CAP gap. In addition to timely filing and strict adherence to H-1B filing requirements, strong case preparation is essential to ensure that those selected in the lottery don't receive rejections or denials. If you have questions about converting from F1 OPT to H-1B, don't wait until the last minute. Preparing ahead of time may mean the difference between working in the US or going back home. VisaPro's attorneys have helped our clients secure thousands of H-1Bs with success rate near 100%. We would like to help you integrate our success strategies into your H-1B filings. If you need assistance with your upcoming H-1B Cap filings or information regarding the H-1B visa program, please call us at 202-787-1944 or send us an email. We'll talk through your priorities and recommend strategies for your H-1B filings based on our prior success. With that, we've come to the end of this presentation. If you wish to continue to receive updates on these topics and more, subscribe to our newsletter. Hope you have a wonderful day.